Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the ULI Capital Region podcast. I know it's been a while, so thank you all for tuning in. This podcast provides updates and insight into what is happening in the development world throughout the Florida Panhandle. We host guests from both the private and public sectors. Our parent organization is the Urban Land Institute, also known as ULI. ULI is a nonprofit education and research institute established in 1936 with more than 48,000 members across the globe. Our North Florida region includes nearly 600 professionals and serves over 30 counties from Flagler to Escambia, including Gainesville, Jacksonville, St. Augustine, Tallahassee, Panama City, and Pensacola. Locally, we are the ULI Capital Region, which includes around 80 members located in the Capital Region area of Tallahassee. Our members include people in every profession and sector of real estate development and land use who network and share knowledge, further their careers, and give back to their profession and communities. This includes developers, planners, attorneys, engineers, municipal representatives, designers, realtors, contractors, university representatives, and many more. Today, we are coming to you from Tallahassee, Florida. My name is David Weiss, and I'm a land use and real estate attorney at the Ausley McMullen law firm. We're a full-service law firm located in Tallahassee and practicing throughout the state with an emphasis on the Panhandle area. I'll be the moderator for the discussion. Joining me today is Tina Ekblad. Tina is the Director of Planning for Stearns Weaver Miller, a law firm with offices in Tallahassee, Tampa, Miami, Fort Lauderdale, and Coral Gables. She operates out of the Tallahassee and Tampa offices and works primarily in the Northwest and Southwest Florida markets. Tina is a certified planner with over 15 years of experience in the private and public sectors. She has worked on a variety of projects during her career, ranging from lot creation to large-scale plan developments to mining facilities. Tina regularly consults with clients to navigate through a broad range of growth management, permitting, and planning issues, and provides expert witness testimony to various advisory boards and elected officials across the state. Tina has worked in the Northwest Florida market for the past 10 years and moved to the Destin area 4 or 5 years ago. So she has experienced a lot of changes to the Panhandle area firsthand. Today, she is going to share her experience with us and provide us with some insight into the explosion of growth and development in the Northwest Florida market. So let's get started. Welcome, Tina.
Thank you, David. Appreciate you having me today.
Absolutely. We appreciate you joining us. So looking at the metrics, I think it's an understatement to say that the Panhandle has experienced exponential growth over the past several years, and it doesn't show any signs of slowing down. In fact, I think the projections show that it will only continue to accelerate for the foreseeable future. First, let's talk a little bit about the reasons for all of this growth. What kind of changes have you seen since you entered the market, and what are you seeing as the major economic drivers for the area?
Well, I think the changes in the Panhandle in many aspects are similar to what we're seeing across the state, right? So in the short term, we had a pandemic and the state in general has had an infusion of population, and the Panhandle is no exception of that. We're seeing a lot more people that want to live here and have been vacationing here for many years. But then we've also had a few things in terms of nature and hurricanes and recent severe weather that have kind of created a little construction pocket, if you will, particularly in Bay County after Hurricane Michael, and then the severe weather that came through in Walton Bay. And I know your market in Tallahassee saw that as well. So generally speaking, those are the things that we're seeing, is just that increase in demand to live in this area. And then as a result, all the infrastructure that's trying to keep up. In the area, we have a few economic drivers. Most people will tell you it's tourism, but we also have a significant number of military bases, and a number of the counties in this region are also bolstering their economy with manufacturing or trade, industrial, and that type of development and employment. And there's really a nice, robust program that occurs between those employers and the college and university and high school systems in the region to train workforce and get them into those manufacturing jobs, whether it's through a certification program or an actual college degree. So that's another driver that may not be as well known, but is in the area and is creating that portion of the economy.
Great. Well, thank you for that. So all this growth obviously puts a pretty big strain on existing infrastructure facilities and services, and really a pretty desperate need for improvements. So what are some of the challenges that you see with the accelerated growth, and what are some of the things that local governments are doing to try to keep up and pay for it all?
Yeah, so the challenges again are very similar in the sense that we've had this massive infusion of population um, in counties that maybe just didn't anticipate it, or school districts that didn't anticipate it. And so now everyone's really focused on, okay, how do we catch up in terms of infrastructure? So that would be your utility systems for central water and central sewer, the transportation network, the schools having additional land to put in new facilities or expanding existing facilities. Those things are really where I'd say collectively across the board, everyone is focused on. And then, of course, as we know in the economy, anytime there's more demand, we have an issue related to pricing. And so with that also comes sort of this reflection on how do we get more housing units into the system, but at an affordable rate so that people can live closer to where they're working, or businesses can have the employees that they need in close proximity rather than driving in from other cities. And in some instances in the Panhandle, we have employees driving in from other states on a regular basis to support those businesses. So that's really what we're seeing in terms of where the focus is right now. I think utilities and transportation are kind of interchangeable at priority number one, number two, but schools and affordable housing are definitely up there as well.
Gotcha. Thank you for that. And now for the topic that we have all been waiting for. What is the good news coming out of the Panhandle area, and what types of opportunities are you seeing in the development world?
I think there's a lot of good news. This conversation is very timely. There are quite a few legislative updates occurring in the region right now. I was able to sit in one this morning and heard that the transportation bill that was signed by the governor this morning actually has several components that will benefit the region, again, in terms of expanding that infrastructure, not just for vehicles, but also for pedestrians. That was an initiative that Walton County, the county I reside in, was not able to achieve last year, which was a penny tax to help support transportation improvements. And so we saw legislative support in the budget for a number of projects. It's our understanding that those projects are included, and whether or not they'll survive the signing of the budget, we don't know yet, but certainly we're hopeful. Eglin is undergoing an expansion in terms of the number of employees, and so they're also assisting with those transportation improvements and support as well. And then our legislators across the board are working very closely with Florida's Great Northwest and the Triumph Fund. So there was a bill this past session where any of the interest from the Triumph Fund used to get swept at the end of each year. And there was a bill this session where we are now able to keep those interest accruals, which means we can fund more projects within the region and again, support that economy and those infrastructure projects to address that demand. So I think all of those things collectively at a state level are very good for our region and supporting these initiatives. And then there are also several things that the local jurisdictions are doing. So for example, starting much further west, the city of Pensacola is working really hard on their citywide strategic plan. They had a number of initiatives that play. And so they're not necessarily taking a step back, but working very hard to understand how all the different initiatives relate back to each other, making sure that they have the foundational data they need to then go apply for state and federal funds to support a number of initiatives, affordable housing being one, hardening, because they're a historical coastal city. So they don't have stormwater management downtown because it wasn't required in the early 1900s. So they grapple with that. They grapple with flooding issues. And so they're working on a lot of foundational data and reporting to go apply for funds to help with that hardening and addressing seawalls and stormwater downtown. And then just generally supporting the expansion of infrastructure for vehicles and pedestrians. They have multiple CRAs within the city, so all of them are updating their master plan, which means that when those TIF funds come in, they can then apply them to those capital improvement projects faster if the master plans are up to date. So I think that's positive because that means the initiatives and the capital improvements of the city are keeping pace with, you know, the market and what we're seeing. Coming a little bit further east, Okaloosa's smashing it out of the park with their industrial development and employment in that sector. They have massive project going on that the Economic Development Alliance is involved in. It's creating more jobs, which of course is creating demand for housing, and they're doing what they can to keep up with both at the same time. Our population's a little higher than where I'm at in Walton, so they just seem to be more organized. I think it's more because their economy is more robust in the sense that it's not as reliant on tourism. Although Walton is taking the cue from them and really trying to round out their economic base as well. Speaking of that, a number of the municipalities in Walton County are taking a page out of Pensacola's book and working really hard on their strategic plans. They have all implemented recent capital improvement projects to keep pace with population demand and housing. And now they're taking it a step further and really looking at what needs to come next. So the city of Freeport, for example, had an update this morning. Their wastewater treatment plant was just expanded and just opened, and they're already looking at their next RFP to implement a new treatment plant in the northern section of the city, which will help with housing that they know is in play and being master planned right now, so that they're not in a position where they have to pause permitting or anything like that as the infrastructure tries to keep up. So I thought that was extremely positive. Walton County's Housing Alliance is looking globally across the county with the municipalities at where are the building permits being pulled? Do we generally have an understanding of how much it costs? And then where does it need to be related to the average salary range, and how much of an issue do we have with affordability? And then what are some things that we can leverage, again, to bring more units into the market at an affordable price? So I think those relationships and collaborative discussions are the right thing to do, the best thing that we can be doing to address this demand. And then on a county level, there are a number of things that are occurring. The county's going through a visioning process to make sure that their comprehensive plan and land development code reflects where they want to be in another 10 to 20 years. They have had several live local projects come through. One has been approved. And that, amazingly enough, the live local legislation brought the public meetings from 13 down to 1. So when you think about the time and expense and energy associated with affordable housing, having 13 public hearings is a massive drain on experts and testimony and all those things that we deal with on a day-to-day basis. Bringing it down to 1 technical review committee meeting means those units can go in that much faster. And then I also heard this morning that there's at least 1 more, possibly 2 more projects coming in, and the AMI percentage is significantly lower than that first project. So that's also really good news for the population in Walton. And then the Economic Development Alliance here in Walton County received several awards for transportation improvement and is working towards other improvements in that area that they're expecting to receive awards on as well. So again, I think those collaborative relationships are helping public-private partnerships and really address the demand that we're seeing in the area. And then moving closer to Bay County, they're just really consistent in terms of development. They kind of just keep chugging along, and there are absolutely improvements that are happening, but they don't ever seem to be retroactive. They seem to keep pace with demand more so than some of the other smaller municipalities that were, I'd say, struggling on the outset and now are transitioning into that forward-looking what do we need to do to make sure this doesn't happen again situation. Speaking on that and going back for a minute, City of Defuniak is doing the same thing. They are, just like Pensacola, updating all their master plans so that they can leverage those TIF funds as they come in. And I heard this morning from their planning director that the long-awaited Veterans Lodge project in the City of Defuniak has all of their local permits. So that project is to help military veterans transition back from overseas if they need it, or handle additional medical care that they may not be able to afford on their own. So they have medical services on site, and then they're also doing overnight boarding if needed for the families. That is a small piece of a much larger master planned community that is mostly, from what I understand, commercial and industrial, very minimal housing. So the City of Defuniak will see a very large infusion from that development in terms of employment, but then also their tax funds. And then the CRA mentioned this morning as well that their main focus is addressing their aging infrastructure. They have a large problem with their sewer system because it's so old. They need to replace a lot of their pipelines and things of that nature. And then they may also need an expansion. I hear both sides, so I'm not entirely certain on that one. And then their second primary is the redevelopment of historical properties. So either preserving them in place for adaptive reuse, or if the structural integrity isn't there, reusing the property in another way that's supportive to the city's economic base. So, I think the big picture and the good news is that we've come through a situation where the demand was so high, everybody was being reactive. And now that it's, I'll say, stabled out a little bit, that might be over projecting, but we're in a situation where everyone's really trying to be proactive. Like, okay, we got through the worst of it. We got through high demand. Now, what do we need to do next to make sure that we have housing coming out of the ground to support everyone? Make sure that our employees have a safe roof over their heads, but also in proximity to where they're working so that we're not continuing to overtax the transportation network. And then where we do have issues with transportation, can we infuse dollars to address pedestrian connectivity or additional lanes or something of that nature? And then secondary to that is the utilities, making sure the treatment plants are up and running, that they have capacity, that we're looking at where the next one or the next expansion should be. School district is a little different. I haven't been able to get as much of an update on that, but I do know that everyone is keenly aware that additional seats are needed across the board, elementary, middle, and high school. And there's a very robust network between all the different colleges and the high schools to create, I'll say, alternatives to the traditional high school for 4 years, college for 4 years. In some instances, that looks like a collegiate high school where kids can earn college credit while still in high school. And then they may go to a different university in a different part of the state. And in other cases, it looks like a trade program where the kids are in high school earning a certificate so that once they're done with high school, they can go have a job while they're apprenticing in some sort of trade and earning in that way. So I don't know that we're going to see a brand new school come out of the ground soon, but we're looking at these other opportunities that can address that demand and also provide educational opportunities in a different way than that traditional 8-year block that we're all used to. So that was a lot. I'll take a breath if you have other questions.
No, Tina, that was great. Thank you so much. I think all the preparation that's currently underway is probably presenting a whole lot of opportunities for professionals like us in the industry. And I think it's really a good thing, like you said, to not be reactionary and to actually be planning is a very good thing. So unless you have anything else to add, I'll just say thank you very much for joining us. It's always a pleasure talking to you. Thanks everyone for tuning in. We hope you all found it very interesting and informative. Please stay tuned for more from the ULI Capital Region, including some follow-up topics and speakers from the Northwest Florida market area. Without anything further, thanks, Tina.
Thank you, David. Thoughts?
And we've